Chili here with Sirius Talis Moon, and this is Moon Hour, and the Moon is beginning to apply to Ketu, midheaven ruled by Venus at 14 degrees Taurus, Venus 12 degrees Sag, ascendant at 18 degrees Leo, ruling over a Sun at 18 degrees Sag, and of course Neptune direct. Mercury is applying on the minute to oppose Uranus. Now, I talked about this before, but this is going to be something that's beyond relevant. This is the second part of when I talked about the myth of the hero soldier. Very simply put, Falcon. Now, I want to give a shout out to what prompted me to press record. And you're actually not going to like this video. It barely got views and no comments, which was unusual. First of all, Alex Baca is teaching how to fry a salmon the right way. To me, that was news. And Psych Retoria. So this is a channel that's very men relatable. The video that didn't get too many views was a female loyalty study of the Nazis. Now, you can watch the video and you can see my comment there, but let's put it plain and simple. But other than that, it's a channel I think a lot of men might find relatable in this economy. But then if you build it with sexual sovereignty, it's going to negate a lot of the problems that he mentions there. It's very simple, and we have it in Europe right now. I'm going to begin with them. I'm going to begin with the Nazis, with the easy example. If the young German men, okay, now when the Nazis, they were elected, supposedly democratically, not less democratically than most other elections after them. At least not the recent ones. And Hitler's petition or agenda was quite simple: to abolish usury, create jobs. Now, he didn't create, it's not just create jobs, he said, put the women back in a house, that evacuates 50% of the working sector. Now, we can think about Germany in the 1930s. I don't think we have 50% of the working sector women today. But back then was the rise of the suffragist movement. And he put the women back in a house, recipe for failed marriage and horrible moms. It's the truth. To have work-life balance, that's important. Not to have anything outside raising the kids. Then how will the kids be raised? I mean, they don't get to travel anywhere. They don't get to develop their own stuff that they like. They don't get exposed to stuff that they like to do. In the best of cases, by the leisure activities that the children are exposed to, the mother begins to develop her own activities or business or something like that. But that's the best of cases. And then the men would go to work, That didn't work. It didn't work. And basically, then there would be a war. The men go out to fight. Now they're fighting for the Nazis, mind you. No mention in Gaza, according to the UN. Elbit. Because it's in NATO. You say, the Israelis, no, 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 no. They're selling weapons to NATO. There goes your 5%. If the Nazi men, okay, the war soldiers, heroes, the Nazis. Now we know them as the Nazis. Back then, yeah, they called them Nazis back then. It didn't mean the same thing it means today. So these Nazis, folks, they went to war, leaving the woman that was deprived of work, which also means she would soon be deprived of voting rights. And any suffragists were put into concentration camps to be ritually tortured and have the occult rites of siphoning their energy. Okay, a lot of the feminists that refuse to talk about, particularly in academia and sciences, that's where I came from, the women that refuse to talk about sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter, the bi-proxy mind control and stuff like that, they don't tap into what the suffragists fought for us. That's why they get only halfway achievements, that they go with petitions to the same offenders that do those rituals to ask for their rights. So they get the rights on paper, and then a ritual is done. Now, these men went to war. They expect a woman to be sexually and emotionally loyal to them when they elected a leader that put any woman in concentration camps if she said no. These men, just like they could go to war, they could loot the lodges that made the rituals to harm the suffragists. Skip back to Europe 2025. If the men pack their guns and they're looting not the trafficking hubs to release the children and the women and the boys, they should not be expecting any loyalty, definitely not sexual. And you know the sexuality with women most often than not is emotional. If they don't loot the Epstein Islands to release the children, with the same guns and the same weapons and the same divisions, They should not be expecting anyone to be loyal to them. And they should know that at the very extortion cults that they're fighting for, no one will be loyal to them either. Now, if a Secretary General is asking, what about the 5%? These people are going to need housing. Shilumim. I'm worse than Trump. Every time Trump pulls a stunt, I cover NATO and I bring it from the opposite angle. It has troubles. But hey, it's true. There's no mention in Gaza at the end of the raid. People think they're looting for the oil. You know, the lamps. They better be looting for beeswax. That's what I'm saying. That's light. That's the real light. It's not the false light. It's not spiritually bypassing. Because the truth, and why did I give this shout out to Psych Psych because this is a perspective of a man about relationship. And of course, if you think about relationships, and I like it that he gets into the historical context. Of course, if you think about relationships, well, most of the world being patriarchal. And I'm not saying about him, okay, generally, if a person is doing nothing to change that structure, what do you expect there to happen? This is why men became more happy in relationships and also outside after feminism. Because the changes that were important to women later made good difference for everyone. Now here's the thing, a person gets by in the world. They're kind, they're courteous, and so on and so forth. And then if something doesn't work for them, they're like, okay, I need to change my strategy now. I'm not saying that you should do the same thing over and over again, you know. Not saying you should be insane, but here's the thing. Checking a C factor is important here. Are there still extortion calls trafficking children? Yes. Why do they need them? They train all the decision makers, including your doctor, including your lawyer, including the commander that decides if you go to war or not. including your banker. Everybody knows that. That kind of makes a difference about how to run a relationship, these policies. If you do nothing in favor of a society that supports sexual sovereignty, what will expect treason? Because if there's no sexual sovereignty, there's treason. And to recover trust after violation of sexual sovereignty, people think to recover trust about after cheating. As an astrologer, either a person was developing a creative endeavor, okay, something happened, it sparked something. If the relationship is all in all good, they're not going to separate. If to begin with the foundation of that relationship was a cover-up for the woman that could not relax into being a woman, and she blamed him for not being monogamous. And he blamed people that the Me Too went too far because I was going to provide for his children and he didn't have money. Those blend that in with extortion cult. That's the divorces we're getting with Uranus at the end of Taurus. No, people do nothing to change that. And what loyalty? What relationships? Now, what does a man do in war? And he expects somebody to be sexually loyal to him when he rapes women and children. Yeah, about the fact of the broken war hero myth I talked about when Neptune was retrograde. But the Neptune direct is about, hey, we have a point of interference here. With all these guns and all these weapons and all this mandatory army recruitment, loot the freaking lodges that do the rituals. Loot the places where they traffic people and release the trafficked people. Disobey legal orders and take that weapon and turn it to actually kill the act of rape, which is war. You'll be surprised. She'll be looking at you differently, let's say. And then the only thing that would come up if it doesn't work with a woman is either you're gay, which is okay. You have the right sexual sovereignty, or she's gay, which is also okay, sexual sovereignty, or the compatibility in the intimacy is, and then you find someone that it works, that's it. For a person being lonely, ending up trying to pay for a shout out to Seizure Girl, GFE, girlfriend experience. It's not that his needs are bad. He wants somebody that's the closest to a girlfriend, and is willing to be the provider financially for that. Okay, but for that girl, she was raped and trafficked, and every intimacy is a freaking trigger, even more than the sexuality, because it's not intimacy. She was raped and tortured. Now, it's very true when, during the Me Too, a lot of people thought I was a sex worker. And in the beginning, I let them think, I don't know why, a while ago I said it. A while ago, I confessed the truth. I'm not a sex worker. And, and I don't even remember what made me say that. Because to me, it was like, it doesn't matter what they think about me, they should be treating me with dignity. So a lot of sex workers were thinking I'm also a sex worker. And a lot of them were telling me, but listen, but when the husband is there with the woman and she's not really, then she also does it for money. Now let's state the fact. In many cases, it is true. Many people run their marriages like that. Comes Uranus, and even the women, because of these traumas or what, the experience, probably men can relate to that, because if we get to the deep down and authentic of ourselves, we think about what was it like to grow as children in an environment where, and sometimes it would be the family, and I'm not even talking about like child abuse. I mean, in some families the age gap was, but to the children, but it doesn't feel, and what is our response as children? Is to disconnect, to dissociate, to maintain the safety of a relation somehow. And ignore and ignore and ignore. Some of us get sick, some of us can't work, some of us don't do well in studies, some of us. And then the immediate question, are they gay? Do we even have sexual sovereignty before we can ask that question? And therefore, the people that are, some people, when they are gay, people are like, well, that's a relief. At least they're into something. And then some people think that if the child is gay, they raised them wrong. Yeah, you definitely maybe they have been raised wrong, but it's nothing to do with it. And the ladies have yeast, and they tell them to take off gluten and dairy. When sex is treated like something that is tradable, even within relationships, I'm not talking sex work or anything, then people lose the sense of embodiment that actually generates what could save, whether it's the marriage or the relationship. Now, with Uranus and Taurus, it's going to be particularly challenging because usually, if I give, let's say, relational reading, and somebody comes to me, Shirley, is this my twin flame? I was married, he was married, and so on and so forth. Now, I have an astrology teacher that was the story, and that was her third marriage, and that was the one. And it was the Nicholas Stojanovic back then told her when she was in her second marriage, you're gonna divorce Slavic. You're gonna divorce, you're gonna marry next, that marriage will be okay. Slavic, they tell it like it is. You could be in her second marriage, nobody cares. It's not true, it's not true. Now, I don't give readings like that. I don't have these predictive abilities in that way. But I do look at general tendencies. And then I say, okay, you were married, they were married. What else happened between you two? What else happened in your life? I began to paint. He began to write. Okay, now we see why you met. It's a Kundalini rise. They may not be together forever, but something creative came out of that union that didn't come up with the previous partner. Now, maybe it's something that somebody was repressing in themselves, and with that person it came out. Like, I really don't know, okay? But the Uranus in Taurus, particularly in the last decan, you know what's the Kundalini rise? She said, not a pedo ring, not a human trafficking ring, and everybody Nazi. Can't say a person is a homemaker to talk about housing first. Now around him there's an army. Women want that, women want that. They look for the karmic, they look for the this, they look for the that. And here's the thing, it really is scary to fight the Nazis. Particularly for people that since youth they grew up to a culture where if somebody doesn't rape an innocent person, they're considered a loser. To inherit the parents' wealth, they need to vouch for pedos. If they vouch for pedos, they'd get treason anyway, and maybe even get assassinated. To try to make wealth outside of the treason cult, And then women don't have children. American women, BIPOC American women, travel to Thailand. Hope they're okay. Oh, I need to check. There's a lady. I don't know if I think she's no longer in Thailand. Because there's a war now with Cambodia. I don't know who started, okay? I remember I had a very good Bulgarian friend, and she liked the traditional songs. So I recorded Jovano Jovanke. The amount of battle in the comment section, whether saying I have a good Bulgarian accent or a good Macedonian accent, I'm like, I was just recording this song. It was a birthday gift. That's all. But you see BIPOC women running from United States all the way to Thailand to not have babies. And this guy says men are doing the same. Can't blame either. The alternative is to both fight the Nazis and not to be raping the Slavs like the Nazis did. You know, I stepped on the 5% again accidentally. Because now we have Bosnia and Herzegovina in NATO. It's like a Model UN episode. Now we just need to make a silly walk out of the grease. Everything. Now here's the thing. Elbit is selling weapons to NATO. Elbit is an Israeli company. Israel thought that its dumb fuckery and bad reputation is done with with having to. They gave up on Hasbara. Now Elbit is selling weapons to NATO. And there might be elections in Ukraine. See, I'm going to say it. People are going to be wondering. When Putin started the war with Ukraine, he talked about the denazification. It's a bit problem because now it's entire NATO. And Finland sitting there. Hey, they got a housing first. They got the treatment of schizophrenia by believing the patient and getting intelligence advantage over the freaking KGB. What they doing with that? Saturn hour. Now, before it is kinder transported o'clock, and instead of talking about the myth of the broken soldier that was actually war criminal and rapist, which is is nothing heroic about that. then we understand that once people get the recruitment order, once they get the weapon, they should be heading one type of destination and one type of destination only. To release the children, to release the trafficked people, to put an end to any type of ritual abuse. Look, the sun ingress to the 19th degree. And Mars on the galactic center is this gnosis. Because that's the point of interference. The woman that you try to traffic and deprive of voting rights, of the right to say no, whether within or outside of marriage, the right to withdrawn consent, she's not going to take a look at you and say, this is a war hero, he's fighting for the motherland. But to loot these type of places, to end the act of rape, to loot the real estate that traffics the people, and release the people, and have these people have housing, healing, and any act of rape stopped, completely stopped, any ritual abuse completely stopped. That's the thing that changes everything. It's not done to appease anyone. It's not a diplomatic act. It's an act of sovereignty. It's an act of knowing that that's the first stage in a very long recovery from 9 millennia of atrocities under the guise of wealth consolidation and nobility obliges. That the generations, the younger generations, some of them are coming from wealth and wanting to do wealth, not in the way of the trafficking. They have to stand to the cold hard truth. They're hardworking as anyone. They're competent as anyone. They have good ideas as anyone. Do they choose to go with the traffickers or to abolish trafficking? If they go with the traffickers, they go with the traffickers. They get algorithed with the traffickers. They get into treason upon treason with the traffickers. They get the legacy of a human trafficker. And you get hunted decades after the wars like a war criminal in secret. Or they get to go against and to end the type of trafficking, the ritual abuse, the harvesting of the energy of the people to create wealth and then deliver them like charity, deliver not even dividends, just something to keep them not completely dead so that they can harvest more. That was the nobility obliged. I remind you about shipping companies. Ship companies, okay? Me and my mom got stuck in Europe, got stuck in Greece. So we went through the winter. Then we wanted to come back by boat, by ship. And we went to one company and they tell us, well, the sea is crazy. November, we don't have any ships. But have your coffee. We'll try to see if our partners here have a ship. And that was the competing company. They were sitting door by door. And that company fortunately had a ship. That's business. The people that get that sustain. The people that don't get that, you see, in the Second World War, people could run through the forest. That's how my grandfather ran. They are trimming down the trees. They are deforesting. Why? Because if there was ritual abuse in these forests, then they build the cities and they trim the forests legally and illegally. It's the air in our lungs, and it's also our best opportunity to escape the 15-minute city in between it being bombed and it being a death camp. People are very visible in the forest when there are no trees. The people that are the policy makers are the people that were ritually abused, had to ritually abuse as a child, and had no way out, and by the time they got to be policymaker, that their energy was harvested and then was promised to them, but only if they keep doing the war crimes, so there was nothing left of the soul of the person. They're so disattached from the body and they became mind controlled in that way. Of course, when I'm raising awareness, it retrieves and creates cohesion. It's the power of raising or speaking it back into awareness and back into sovereignty. Because this energy that they had as infants, clone or not, is their life energy. And they were tortured to only be able to tap into it through extortion. So the soul wants to unite with the energy, but the antidote is to negate. And when they were so tortured, but here's the thing, when the people get up and set a fierce boundary and stop a ritual midway in and do not allow that ritual to continue and do not allow rape to continue, that works on the mind controlled person. It's an existential crisis of returning back into cohesion. Don't look for Epstein lists. Loot Epstein Island and you get to see the list. There's gonna be a mandatory army. There's gonna be recruitment. People are gonna have guns. But if the people are gonna have guns were the people that the army, the American army female soldiers, were promised to them as sex slaves within the army, they should not expect anybody to be loyal to them, definitely not sexually. And within the cult is treason all over the place. And no mention in Gaza. By the time they do, they get exposed, like every one of them, because it's all for extortion. Anyway, look at this mid-heaven beta per se as I speak. It's beta per se minima today. $12.12. That mean it was today. Beta per se was minima today. And here is the thing, is a world war because we haven't tended to that. And at the world war anyway, we're going to have to tend to that. Anyway, war is scary. Anyway, war people can die. And anyway, when we talk about those rituals, that's the thing, that's a war. It's not just a plague. It's not just an emergency case. It's a war. In a war, people that get the mandatory recruitment have weapon. It's what they do with that. They should expect no loyalty if what they do with that is not to stop any type of violation of sovereignty in spirit and in matter, sexually and not.